Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which this film was made, the Gadigal people, the Gamaragal people, and the Darkinjin people. And I'd like to especially acknowledge the decolonisation efforts of First Nation activists, which has been a real inspiration to me as someone born from Hong Kong and other former British colony. Decolonisation is a process of critically examining our communities, cultures, and thinking, and seeing which parts has been imposed by colonisation and which parts we should rethink and reshape. It really showed me how a deeper understanding and connection with our history and our culture is the most powerful way to drive positive change in our communities.
I hope everyone enjoys the film.
Firstly, I just want to say the actor for Mom is actually here, Grace. Every time I watch him sing, he's the one that edited my scripts, and he's the one that had some really crucial edits that really injected so much more richness and nuance into the relationship, the story. And actually my dad, he's the one that played Professor Liu. My mom is helping with the snacks table. Special thank you to City of Sydney, Susanna. She's not here today, she's on leave. Pip. Where's Pip? Yeah. Okay, yeah. Yeah, without them, this wouldn't have happened.
And also Joe here today has been helping me out, stepping in because Susanna is away. So thank you so much to the team at City of Sydney. And then, of course, Acon. We've got two representatives. They have been helping me just promote this event, all the graphics you see, all the food layouts. Yeah, they brought it over, and then, yeah, you guys wouldn't have turned out without, without their help. So a huge thank you to Acon.
Thanks for sticking around for our conversation. My name is Adrian. I'm going to be moderating our panel chat for this evening. And we're joined by some fabulous panelists. I too, by the way, would like to pay our respects to the traditional custodians of the lands on which we gather for us today. That's the Gadigal people of Eora Nation. We honour elders past and present because this is, was and always will be Aboriginal land. My name's Adrian, my pronouns are he, him. I'm a former co-chair of Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras and a board member of a festival that ran a couple of years ago called Sydney World Pride. In my day job, I help with training, governance and communications, but really I just ask lots of annoying questions. I was that kid in high school that asked lots of irritating questions, and somehow I have turned this into a full-time job. I'm joined today by the fabulous Nurul Tajalaris. Her pronouns are she, her. Nurul is the president and founder of an extraordinary organisation called Sydney Queer Muslims. A late bloomer in the world of activism, she incorporated the organisation in 2017 with two other members of the community as a response to the Pulse massacre in Orlando, with the aim of providing support to queer Muslims in Sydney through social connections, referrals to crisis, and spiritual counselling and crisis accommodation. The organisation has grown in numbers and involvement in the public space. They really do fabulous work. And Sydney Queer Muslims also produces podcasts and other resources regarding issues that affect the queer Muslim community. There are annual events including iftar dinners and Eid celebrations for the community. So welcome. We also have with us Cedric Cheng, whose pronouns are he, they. Cedric, Cedric, what aren't you? You are a lawyer, you're a public health researcher, and an advocate for LGBTQIA+ rights, health equity, and multicultural inclusion. He's a founder of ANTRA, another exquisite organisation. And I think we'll hear a little bit more about ANTRA in the course of our chat. But Cedric has played an instrumental role in advancing community-led initiatives that support queer individuals from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. His advocacy focuses on intersectional challenges faced by LGBTQIA+ migrants and asylum seekers, including access to healthcare, legal rights, and social inclusion. Cedric has led ANTRA's engagement in national health campaigns, community education, policy advocacy, and particularly in areas concerning HIV awareness, mental health support, and culturally competent service provision. I'll stop there because we could talk all day long about all the stuff that you do, Cedric. And then finally, last but not least, we have the filmmaker, Victor. Victor's pronouns are he, they. He's a queer Australian storyteller born in Hong Kong of Cantonese and Teochew Malaysian background. He's interested in telling character-driven stories that explore experiences on the margins and intersections. I feel like we could say the word intersections all day long. He spent over 5 years leading the LGBTQ+ employee network for the tech company he worked for, focusing on raising awareness on queer youth and intersectional issues. And he wrote the film that we all just had the privilege to watch in 2021 in response to the destructive impact of the 2017 marriage equality debate on many diaspora communities in Australia. I'm so impressed that he wrote a script for a movie during the pandemic. I just walked around in circles in my local park. All right, so Victor, let's start with you. You ready?
Yep.
Here we go. It's an easy one. I would love for you to be able to share a little bit about the making of this film and why it was important for you to make it.
Thanks, Adrian. This is going to be a slightly long answer. But yes, like you just introduced, it was in response to the experiences of the marriage equality survey and the aftermath. I felt that it was the most vulnerable in our queer community that suffered in the process of achieving marriage equality. So yeah, attacks on trans people intensified. Safe Schools program was attacked by mainstream media to the point where it was kind of discontinued in 2018. And of course, there was a really destructive impact on our diaspora communities because in the mainstream, I think the No campaign knew that that battle was lost, so they targeted our communities. And you could see the pamphlet that I did not create that was a pamphlet from the time that was distributed around Hurstville and other suburbs where there was a lot of Chinese community. And yeah, and then I came across a research report from University of Western Sydney called Home is Where the Story Begins. And it really confirmed a lot of the frustrations and feelings that I felt. Queer people in our diaspora community felt disconnected from mainstream society, disconnected from their cultural communities, disconnected from the mainstream queer community as well. So it was just a really isolating experience that continued for many years. And I kind of ruminated in this kind of frustration for a little while until actually the pandemic started. And then I was like, I need something positive to listen to watch. And I watched Benjamin Law's Family Law. I watch Schitt's Creek, even though that's mainstream. It's the positive storytelling that really inspired me. And there's this podcast called Shoes Off, produced by Jay Uri. He's a gay Asian, Singaporean Australian, and his podcast really delves deep into Asian Australian experience and not just critically, but celebrating our experiences and culture as well. And it was actually one particular episode that explored after-school tutoring. And there's all this kind of perception how kids are kind of put through this kind of demanding thing of after-school tutoring, but then he kind of went into that further and explored the nuance of it. And there was one interview with one tutor that said he sees his main job is not to tutor the kids academically, but to be their friend, to affirm their sense of self, to build up their confidence. And that that was the episode that inspired me. Like pretty much within half an hour, that main scene was written with the piano teacher, and everything was written around that. The characters and the story was written around that. And the other thing is the voice referendum, like the lead up to that, the campaigning, the decolonization efforts. I listened to this podcast interview with Aretha Brown. She's a very impressive young queer First Nations activist. And that podcast talked about decolonization, and that really kind of inspired me and made me realize that like a deeper connection and exploration of our diasporic cultures is the way to progress, to drive progress in our communities, rather than just criticize our own communities, but have a deeper connection and realize, a lot of it is the problems is actually because of colonization and that sort of process of impringing or assimilation and all that process. So yeah, I really wanted to make a film. Firstly, write a film that depicts how our community only needs to look at our people, our own culture, to be inspired to embrace our queer young people. Sorry, that was long.
That's all good. I could see people nodding in the audience. So there you go. I'm going to ask the other panelists this question now about what parts of the film resonated with you most and what did you find relatable. And I will just say that the bit that was most triggering for me was the piano practice, the scales, and I think anyone who ever listened to me play scales would also have felt quite triggered. But Nurul, what resonated with you the most?
Well, this is the second time I'm watching this film, and I still got that lump in my throat.
Yeah.
And I think the loudest part of the movie for me was the unspoken words and the constant scanning of your area to find clues that there might be another gay in the village, And for me, the Ice Age, I identified with that because I felt like the last mammoth on Earth and looking for my tribe. So that was what I can see the desperation in the eyes and lumped my throat again. I'm going to pass this.
You gave a lump in the throat. Cedric, how about you?
I resonate with many parts of the film. I was that. So I was born in China. I grew up in Hong Kong. So it was my typical life. It was me that I learned the violin and the piano, and I would be suffering. And I think at the age of Peter, I came to be awakened and be aware of myself. And my parents fought a lot. I also had the experience of, my parents having high expectations on me for me to fit in, for me to be normal, for me to be the typical kid to grow up as. I think that is the struggle of many. Not just like Chinese, but a lot of Asian kids in general. But there's one thing that I do want to point out was that pamphlet that the film started with. That pamphlet was quite true. That pamphlet is the reason why I'm here today. That pamphlet founded Entra. That pamphlet.
So that pamphlet pretty much was
the
lowest point, and it's the reason why.
But I have to say that the Muslims claim to be the one that brought the no votes in the Western suburbs, so we have to stake that claim. Even though we make only 2% of the population, we were blamed for it. And right now, we have to make a joke out of it because it's not true. But yeah, anyway, sorry.
No, I was going to say, because I remember during the plebiscite for marriage equality, there was a MP who represented one electorate in Victoria, and she's I'm not name, but she's a leader of the Chinese community. And she once said, as an MP, that in Chinese Australia, there are no gay people. And that was 2017. And in 2018, I saw that, and I was so upset by it. as if I was invisible. So in 2018, the three friends with me, so the three of us founded Entra for Queer Chinese in Australia. So that was 2018, we found ourselves, and now we have 3,000 people. So the proof that we exist, we are visible, and we are loud. And I'm so glad to see this movie, because it's not just a movie for queer Chinese, by queer Chinese, but the fact that a lot of these stories resonate a lot with our lives and our angles is precious.
Yes. I love that, because I think, just to both of your points there, I think the marriage equality debate, shall we call it that, was one, but the myths, we still have to do the work of dispelling all of these myths that tumbled out of the public discourse at that time. And the memories that we have, like the memories of those pamphlets, we still have to work through those memories. So to have this actually positive, beautiful story being told about that time recuperates some of that difficult time for us. So I think that is it's an absolutely lovely thing that you've done here by making this film, Victor. I would like to now talk about this issue of coming out, if you wouldn't mind. This movie is not a straightforward coming out story. In fact, the main character doesn't actually come out at all. And I think kudos to all the cast that you did so much through expression, facial expressions. But I am wondering, and I'm going to ask you all this, how important you think coming out is nowadays. I say this as someone who did come out to my parents, and I was actually shocked that they were shocked. I was like, yes, yes, your child who loves musical theatre, whose idols are Dolly Parton and Wonder Woman, yes, he is gay. But I'm wondering for you guys, how important is coming out nowadays? Nurul?
There is a saying by Maya Angelou that there is no greater agony than an untold story inside of you. So not coming out, like keeping things inside you, turning it into a secret, becomes shame, which leads to mental health problems. So what we tell our people is find someone you trust, tell them that you can trust them to keep this bit of you. And the younger kids nowadays, they feel a lot of pain, and they think that coming out will solve that pain. But we tell our people, it takes 10 years for us to come to terms with our own sexuality. It's going to take your parents another 10 years. So there is a strategy if you need to tell your parents that, move out, find an escape route, then tell your parents. Because, I've seen the outcome is they fully accept you, and I've seen machete scars on somebody's hands, or they're totally banished. And I guess our mainstream queer community never talks about the grief of losing your family. And it's not just your immediate family. Sometimes, even like maybe the Arabic community or the Lebanese community where your whole street is your family. It's like everybody goes on a plane and the plane goes down, right? And you don't get flowers from people. And we get queer people telling, why don't you just leave your family, But they don't understand that grief, the loss. And nobody gives you flowers or condolences when you're on your own, So we need to understand that bit of coming out. And, I hear stories, we hear stories about when guys come out to their mothers, there'll always be a scene where they faint or fall down the stairs, hair pulling, chest beating, like, you're gonna get AIDS and die, that kind of drama. So part of it is preparing for that inevitability of that drama. And there's a lot of work involved to tell your family. So it's the loss and grief, and then the family will go through what will people say, and the fact that we use terms like love is love, that's really problematic for us, because it shows you're not discerning with who you love. Like, we all know the dating pool is small, right? It's brutal. Dating is brutal. And then when you find someone you love and miraculously they love you back the same way, you know, it's not. Some people can they change partners every other week. But for some, dating is brutal, and so it's not love. It's not love. And the other thing is about they use the word pride. That's another problematic thing for us because if I rule Australia, I would have them change from pride to dignity, because that's your basic human right. You have dignity. That's your birthright, right? But pride, for people of faith, is like you're already, for the Orthodox Muslim, you're already an affront to God. And then you use the word pride, you know, and it's got negative connotations. But if you use the word dignity, it's not on me to prove it. It's on you to show that, you know, to show that you are giving someone human dignity. So, yeah.
I don't know. Just a quick,
Victor, please.
Yeah, and I think for Chinese community as well, when I think the virtues that we uphold traditionally in Chinese culture is humility and stoicism and focus on the collective or the family. Yeah, that doesn't resonate, even though like most traditional Chinese aren't historically religious, it doesn't resonate with the Chinese community either.
Cedric, I think to respond to that question coming out, can I ask how many of you understand or speak a variety of Chinese?
Show us.
Okay, all right. So I feel like being Chinese, there's always this notion of being in Mandarin, or Cantonese, guai. In English, it means well-behaved. There's no direct translation to it in English because it's not an English concept. For many years, we Chinese will be very conditioned to well-behave, to be guai, to listen to your parents, to fit in, to live in a model, almost like there's a perfect equation for you to be the perfect Chinese, which is have good grades, go to good schools, go to good universities, take a good major, get a good job, get a good wife, have a good child. That's all the perfect Chinese.
It's not much to ask.
Yeah. So, because the fact that like for us, derailing from the idea of why means you're bad, negative. And to many of us, coming out is the derailing from well-behaved. And coming out is problematic because to many of us, I remember me, I didn't just come out for martial arts. I came out to my mom for, I didn't like ballet, I didn't like piano, I didn't like science, I didn't want to be a doctor, I didn't want to be a lawyer. So
now you're coming out.
I know, right? So, I remember 2 years ago during Sydney World Pride, I tried to do something called Coming Out, Coming Home. It's a community exhibition of how really queer Chinese look like. And we did it in the Hurstville Library, right at the center of a lot of the Chinese Australians. And the moment that we decided to have, to announce that we're going to have the exhibition, the council received around, I was told, hundreds of letters from local Chinese parents saying that our exhibition was not well behaved. So, but then we really invited them to the exhibition and to look like how well behaved we were. As in, like, we are normal. We are the ordinary people. We have kids. We get married. We have parents. We love our parents. We are loved by our parents. We're just like everyone else. There's one sentence from the movie that I don't know whether everyone has got it quite well, but it talks about, I'm going to forget, so I'm going to take out my phone, so I'm going to make a note on it. 道法自然. It's a Taoism concept that says the man follows the way of earth, earth follows the way of heaven, heaven follows the way of the Tao, and Tao follows the way of itself. And I remember when I came up to my mom, she said that I was not natural, 我不自然. But throughout the course of the years, the fact that I have brought home many boyfriends, now I brought my husband that I've married my husband for 7 years now, and the fact that I have a life that looks natural to her, I think to us, it's not just coming out, it's coming home. It's for me to go back home and have that, embrace my queerness, not just as an individual, but as a collective.
Fabulous. I just love the different nuanced perspectives that we all have about coming out, because I think once upon a time, back in the Stone Age when I was coming out, there was this idea that that was sort of the final destiny of being gay. You have to come out, and it's this one singular epic moment, and that's it. And that's not really the case. That you decide whether to come out or not in different conversations with different interactions and different people, and it's absolutely your choice. It's not imposed on you by other people. The other thing I want to say there is being a model migrant is really exhausting, isn't it, Just? I'm going to move on now, sorry, please, Victor, please.
Quickly say,
Yeah.
I just want to clarify that all the support and advocacy groups, the education, psychological boards, all of that clear advice is you never pressure someone to come out. That is, and for some people it can be quite dangerous, as Narul pointed out, to something physically unsafe. To maybe for Chinese kids, it's the possibility of losing what little autonomy and freedom they have in their lives. So it can be something quite dangerous, and unfortunately, I think it's more the mainstream media depictions that have kind of upheld this central experience of coming out. And but I will say, for me personally, from a young age, I knew that coming out was important for me. I felt that it was essential for my sense of dignity, my integrity, my sense of pride as a person. But I will acknowledge that I did not have a typical Chinese upbringing that perhaps Cedric had. I was born in Hong Kong. My mom was worked in the education department, so I grew up around a more progressive mindset, even though that mindset may not have explicitly applied to queer issues, but my personhood, my autonomy, my sense of self was always encouraged and respected, so it wasn't so difficult for me personally to kind of find that important, to kind of represent myself authentically. But I can understand that it's not the case for most people that grew up in a Chinese family.
Great, thank you. Good segue for the next question. So as we've acknowledged, so much of what passes in the movie is unspoken. It's not actually said. It's expressed, but it's not said. The characters talk more about music, if you've noticed, and music practice, and Chopin really gets his flowers, than, say, sexuality. Many cultures don't have a language or a precedent for talking openly about mental health. So how do we support the mental health and well-being of young people, like the main character, when so many of their struggles with culture, sexuality, and so on, are internalized and go unsaid? Cedric, I'm going to throw that curly one to you, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, I remember talking to my mom about the mental health issue, and the solution of my mom was she asked me to drink more herbal tea. There was her solution to it, right? But it's so obvious that as an affirmative idea of fitting in Chinese culture, mental health is not really talked about in many ways, of what it means and what it implies, how it impacts a family. And if you watch the movie of how the parents fought with one another, I think it's almost incomprehensible for many modern Australians that if you're not happy, why stay together, right? But it's such a concept that's so deep-rooted within Chinese that even if you're not happy, even if you find it challenging and difficult, you have to finish it. You have to do your duty because of the fact that you've committed to it. So I felt like mental health issue for the Chinese community, especially the queer Chinese community, is a moment of we understanding not just for care for ourselves, but knowing the fact that mental health is care for family, care for us as a collective. And I think that's the moment that I got a bit of success with my parents, where I convey how their mental health will affect mine, so as vice versa. So I think having that sort of concept being talked more about within the community, collectivism, and how that from our history, from our culture can impact our health, is something that's quite, I suppose, interesting.
Fabulous, thank you. Daryl.
Well, recently, a friend of mine told me that her niece attempted suicide. She was lesbian, you know, I guess she was afraid of telling her parents, and it became worse, and then she attempted. Thankfully, she's alive, and they got this rule where, you know, you're still my daughter, but whatever you want to, gay things you do things, do it outside the house. So some people may not be willing to accept the compromise, like, you know, some activists will say, no, you have to be totally, you know, 100% yourself and authentic, even to your parents. But for our culture, that's a compromise that is okay because it keeps peace in the house. It's more like don't ask, don't tell. Some people don't like it, but you still get to have your family, and you know, and you can work on it on a long-term plan. And I was just figuring out what is it that they think we do outside. And I think it's more of, I'm not familiar with your values or your shared values, I'm afraid, because I'm a migrant. If our parents came here as migrants, the trauma of that is still within them, and then to lose your children to other influences, that's again traumatizing. And then the trauma from the child from that. So it's like, you know, like this room here, you'll probably make corporate decisions, you know, on a day-to-day basis. But if I say something triggering, every one of you is like a 5-year-old child and nothing goes through your head. So we're in the trauma realm where sometimes things don't make sense. And whatever thing you can get to give you comfort and safety, who's to say, who's to criticize, you know? So I think our community has also had to justify that how we do things are different, and because, you know, we don't leave the house unless we're getting married, right? And a lot of us on my tribe, people are planning, okay, which job can I get as far away from the family as possible? Use that as an excuse to be free. So, you know, that's fine. Like, you know, I moved 7,000 kilometers away. So, and yeah, so whatever you need to do to keep the people you love around you and still be you, do it. Don't have to justify it to anybody. That's, yeah.
Wise words.
Just building on that, right? So today is the second day of the Lunar New Year, or Chinese New Year, right? I don't know whether everyone, I was just talking to Victor and Adrian about it. What do we do on day 2 of the Lunar New Year? Exactly, in Chinese, 回娘家.
You win.
So in plain English, go back to your mom. So traditionally on day 2 of Chinese New Year, you would go home to visit your mother. There has been a tradition for 5,000 years. And having watched this movie, I felt like when we talk about pride, when we talk about coming out, we have a lot of focus and stress on ourselves, us, me. And we forget the fact that in the equation of coming out, in the equation of pride, there are people around us, our parents, our families, people who care us and love us. And I think to Chinese, or to anybody, cherish that love is the source of their mental health. And the fact that in the movie, it was a bit of a twist It's towards the end when the mom talk about her story, talk about her possible queer self. I think that's something I didn't see coming, and I think that was something that's cherishable. It's something that we should all think about. Are we missing something in this equation of coming up? So I'm not going to go. Maybe not just visit my mom. I might go talk to her and tell her how much I appreciate her presence.
Because the film doesn't actually specify who can freely flourish. All the characters.
Oh, I certainly saw the mom was a lesbian.
This is a critical comparative literature analysis 101 everywhere.
It was left open to interpretation. Yeah, we had Grace and I had quite kind of discussions on that, and I think there was a lot of ambiguity in that. I actually have a slightly different reading myself personally as well. Maybe not like a lesbian, but maybe like definitely an experience of same-sex attraction that maybe she didn't fully understand at the time either, but seeing the piano teacher kind of gave her a new light to view her past experience in. Yeah, and did you want to add more to?
No, I just said another lesbian would buy the right fish. You know?
I think that ended that question just there.
I do want to share something is that like I don't have the expertise or experience to comment on mental health in general, but I will share the advice that I read from experts during the marriage equality is that there's very simple 3 things that everyone can do to make sure that young people, particularly queer young people, feel supported. And it's number 1, it's to just not disallow queer content in your home environment. Like at the start, when she switches off the radio, that sends such a clear message to young people like this queer things, queer issues is not allowed in the home space. So it's just to not switch it off. Great if you can say something positive about it, but you don't even have to. Just allowing queer material, queer content, queer things to be in your home space makes a huge difference. And then number 2 is to just talk about having queer people in your life, workmates, other parents at the school, like they're just ordinary people. You don't have to say they're the best people, just they exist and you acknowledge them. And you talk about them like any other normal person.
But they are also the best people. So.
And sorry, there is a third thing. It's just to not assume the gender of your child's romantic interest or future partner. Like, people think that it's, like, obviously you can't go all the way like this mother did with her vulnerable, like going vulnerable to really connect with your child, but there are very simple things. Like my brother, before I was ready to come out, like you said, even though I was like quite clear in myself, I didn't have any angst about being gay. I had this clear plan of coming out, but it was a long plan, like you said. Yeah. My plan was finish uni, get a good job, move out, be completely independent financially and like domestically, then come out. And it was like a long-term plan, like you said, like 10 years, right? Even though I didn't have a lot of the issues that maybe Cedric went through. And my brother, before I was ready to come out, he knew because he saw me, because he loves me. And like before I was ready to come out, like he made sure I knew he had gay friends. He made sure I knew that he was supportive of queer issues. And like you said, even though I didn't need to come out to him, he was the person I knew I was like safe with. So that's the thing that really matters for young people. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to ask one last question. I'm very conscious of time, and I know that especially after this film, and especially at this time of year, dinner is a sacred rite for all of us. But look, I wanted to say one of the other beautiful things about this film is that it resists the usual media stereotypes about migrant parents. Being coercive. We're so used to seeing like dramas about migrant parents being coercive and unfeeling. The main character's on this journey of self-discovery and learning, but so are his parents. And I just want to say here, for me personally, so my mum passed away about 18 months ago. I think about her every single day, and I'm so grateful that you rendered this beautiful relationship between a mother and child that resonated with me so deeply, where that it's not a coercive relationship at all. It was a loving one. But I want to ask you all, how can our communities better support our parents and our guardians?
I think our activism doesn't happen on the streets, but in living rooms and kitchens. So we can't, my organization is working on a resource, a toolkit for parents to start that conversation with parents. Because, like you said before, we don't have the vocabulary for it. But what most parents have in common is their love for the kids. So we need to dispel the myth that we are with the gay people that have taken their kids and they were in a cult and we have forgotten them and who's going to take care of them when they're old. I think this is my personal theory. It's all the fear of losing their kids. And I think when you look at people, when you look in the trauma world, there are two sets. The spectrum is, one is someone who has had terrible family life growing up and never want to be like their parents, and the other end is people who desperately don't want to lose their parents and will do anything they want to have the family in their life, right? So I guess we just take small steps to make sure that it doesn't become an abstract word, but it's just the love between a child and the parents, and that's how we work with. And our activism is always just think about what the words we use and the actions we take that will affect some 17-year-old in Lakemba, for example.
Yes.
So we don't rattle cages, it's a long stretch of activism, but that's what we have to do.
I love that. Thank you. Cedric.
I think there's no definite answer to it, but my observation is I feel like it's about the environment that we provide to our parents. And when I walk into this hall today, I met Victor and then his mum. And his mum was so chatty to me, telling me how proud he is about Victor and how happy she is about today. And I think it has to do a lot with what our parents see in us. As going back to the idea of being what we have being white, it really is an idea of showing your parents that you are living a good life. You're living a life that you're happy. And I think the love from parents is so strong that no parents want to see you be unhappy. So show your genuine self, show that you're happy. And so that's one. The other thing would be to create a family environment for your parents as well. I feel like from the community, especially for myself, when I came up to my mother, I felt like, yes, I'm out of the closet, but in the meantime, I'm putting her into a closet. Because from that moment onwards, she'll have to conceal herself. She'll have to conceal me. After I have a big brother and my other brother to my extended family side. So my uncles, my aunties had no idea that my brother and I being gay because my mom was so fearful of that she's going to get judged by her parents, by her families, and she's going to be isolated by her families. So what Andrew we are doing currently is we are trying to normalize that sort of narrative by giving more network opportunity for these queer parents, by giving them more space to interact with one another. And I asked my mum one day why she actually sort of came to accept me quite quickly. And she said that it was because she went on a circle of entry events with your parents, and she realized that, that mum is the mother of a gay doctor. It's Sam from Norwalk, and for that we are trying to do the event next Sunday in Ashfield. You just grab a pamphlet and pick back off the hall. There's on their website, you find our event there. So we welcome all people from the community who are not from the community, who are interested, especially parents and friends who want to feel the fact that it's not conflicting to be queer and Chinese at the same time.
Love it, thank you. I am conscious of time, but Victor, as the filmmaker, you get the last word.
Okay. Yeah, so I think that was one of my central message of the film was that I wanted to convey is the power of just ordinary, everyday visibility in our communities. Like the power it has to make other families connect again. And in the film, like, a lot of people might feel like, oh, a lot of things just lined up, but no, like, would the mom have seen her past experience in that way? Would she have kind of used her past experience to affirm and support her son if she didn't see the piano teacher openly sharing that she has a partner, that partner is so instrumental, so supportive to her to look after her mum? It is like I've heard a lot of podcasts. It's never what people see in the media that changes their minds, changes their hearts and mind. It's what their neighbours, what their family and friends. It's who they see in their everyday life, in their workplace, in their kids' school. That's the thing that changes their perspective and changes their minds.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We have come to time, but please thank our panellists for the conversation. I'd also like to thank City of Sydney for hosting today's event, and also, as always, for the fabulous work that ACON does. But also, thank you all for joining us this evening. Happy New Year, and have a great life. Take care.
Thank you for keeping everything on track.